Hi guys, welcome to episode 4 of season 2 of Morning Chai and Ikigai. This is your podcast host Priyanka. Now, this is something I do every Sunday wherein I speak on a wide range of topics. But this season, however, is a special dedication to women and everything about them, and it goes under the hashtag Homage to Venus. Now, the topic of human psychology, of human personality, is one that has always fascinated me. So, at various stages in my life, I have found myself looking up the Myers Briggs test and taking the ink blot test, just because I was so curious to know what it is that drives my subconscious. And all that reading about human behavior and reading about human psyche eventually led me to Carl Jung and led me to read about his analysis, which is an entire subject in itself, actually. But today I thought, since we are on the topic of women, why not talk about feminine archetypes? Of course, this topic should come with a disclaimer that the human psyche is so complex that it cannot be pigeonholed into one clear-cut archetype. So while I'm discussing the various archetypes with you, it is common that you will find them overlapping, and you will find that you'll be able to relate to more than one archetype. Having said that, there is definitely going to be one dominant archetype that will make you go, oh my god, this is so me. So let's get started. Now, according to most Jungian psychologists, there are 7 feminine archetypes that are prevalent in contemporary society. There is the mother, there is the lover, there is the maiden, the queen, the huntress, the wise woman, and the mystic. So Carl Jung, he defined archetypes as these instinctive patterns that are burned deep into into the human collective unconscious, and they form the basis of human behavior. So you can say that archetypes are the basis of all unlearned instinctive patterns of behavior. Now, there is something called the collective conscience, which is a reservoir of human experiences. And these human experiences form the basis of these archetypes. Now, these archetypes that exist in this collective conscience, they loom over our psyche, and they are the ones that influence how we interact. They influence our actions, our reactions, our behavior towards people. Now, for most parts, these archetypes within us, they work symbiotically. And when they work symbiotically, they help us to achieve the desired goal. But sometimes what happens is these archetypes may also clash, and that is why it is important that we identify, that we know which one is our dominant archetype. And then we can work accordingly. So having a knowledge about these archetypes, not just the dominant one, but also all the other archetypes, is important, because when we have enough knowledge about them, that is when we can tap into these, and that is when we can work on ourselves and on our weaknesses, when we can resolve internal conflicts if there are any. That is when we can develop our strengths further. And all this makes attaining a goal a lot more easier than when we don't know what our dominant archetype is. Now, they say that a woman really needs to be able to connect to all of these 7 archetypes in order to experience what is called true fulfillment in life, in terms of managing her relationships, in terms of managing her money, in terms of managing her family, abundance. So now let's go to the archetypes. The first one we are going to discuss is the lover. Now, the lover archetype is one that inspires deep communication, is one that inspires intimacy. It represents sensuality, it represents creativity, passion. So, in three words, if I were to sum up the lover archetype, it would be captivate, create, and connect. Thinking of examples, think of Samantha from Sex and the City. She is the typical example of the lover archetype. Or if we are talking about Greek mythology, then we have Aphrodite. So the lover archetype is, it represents a woman's most primal urge to create as well as procreate, in the sense that her energy field is so strong, it is so charged, that she can draw people easily towards her. She draws people around her like a magnet, like moths to a flame. But on the one hand, she feels this need for freedom, while on the other, she feels this need for deep, intimate connections. So a kind of paradox of sorts. Now, women belonging to this archetype, they are meant to be naturally seductive, and they can easily, naturally besot, and they can beguile, they can revitalize, they can arouse passion spontaneously, they can inspire creativity, and these are all their strengths. But just like all other matters of Jungian analysis, this one has its shadow too. So the drawbacks of the lover archetype would be a lack of focus, an inability to concentrate on one particular thing, a fragile self-esteem. These are the drawbacks. Having said that, every woman is known to have access to this lover archetype, and it is often found to be the most dominant archetype in most women. And it is seen that women who belong to the lover archetype, they usually have artistic careers. So, in a nutshell, I would say that this is the most empowering energy a woman can have access to. So the second archetype that we are discussing is the maiden archetype. Now think Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction, or think Persephone from Greek mythology, or think Marilyn Monroe, or Princess Diana, or Holly Golightly from Breakfast at Tiffany's. These are all examples of the maiden archetype. So the maiden archetype is dark, free-spirited, she's enthusiastic, she's youthful, and women belonging to this archetype are naturally excited about life. They are energized. They are always bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to take on the world. There is a school of thought that says that they are yet not jaded by life's hardships, by the shortcomings that life eventually presents to a woman. But I think that we are all the maiden archetype at some level, when we are young, when we are starting with something new, when we are innocent. So the maiden archetype is comfortable in her own skin, and she is completely authentic in what she shows the world, in who she is and how she presents herself to people. So there is a sense of naivete, a sense of innocence about her. There is this creative side to her. There is a compassionate element in her personality, but at the same time she has a dark side as well. So now mature maiden archetypes, they are supposed to be empathetic and capable of displaying great inner strength, but at the same time their weakness is that they may be attracted to the wrong kind of relationships. So just like Persephone was attracted to Hades and had an intimate relationship with Hades, so is the maiden archetype. Women belonging to this archetype will be attracted to the wrong relationships or dangerous relationships because of their mutual codependency, because of their vulnerable nature. So to sum up, I would say that this is an archetype which has an energy of transformation, and it teaches us not to take life too seriously, to live life with the enthusiasm of a young, innocent child. And I think that is exactly how we need to live sometimes. The third archetype that we're now going to discuss is the mother archetype. So, this archetype is the nurturing, caring, responsible, highly compassionate woman. Basically, this archetype represents a mother's a maternal instinct, a woman's desire to create life. So, women belonging to this archetype, they tend to put others before themselves all the time. So even when a mother archetypal woman is beyond her childbearing age, or even when she hasn't attained her childbearing age as yet, even then this nature will show up in her interactions, in her behavior. So, in a group of friends going out, the woman embodying the mother archetype will be the one who will make sure everybody is okay, everybody is settled, everybody has got what they wanted. And I'm sure every friend circle will have this one woman who is a natural caregiver, who is the mother archetype. And these women are very warm people, they are down to earth. But they have a shadow side as well. They sometimes feel taken for granted and they feel depleted of their energy, their enthusiasm. And rightly so, because these women, they find it very difficult to set personal boundaries. They find it difficult to step down from this caregiver role that is inherently them. They find it difficult to let go of this nurturing nature. And they're very stubborn in that way. Examples of the mother archetype would be from Greek mythology, we have Demeter, who is the mother of Persephone, and who, in my opinion, is one of the best examples of the mother archetype because she represents this strong caregiver who is so stubborn and who finds it difficult to let go of her daughter, that she goes to the extent of even laying down a curse on Persephone. Then we have Kali Ma from Hindu mythology. Of course, there are real life heroes like Mother Teresa, Michelle Obama, then there's Oprah Winfrey, who are embodiments of the mother archetype. The fourth archetype we're going to discuss is the huntress. Now, the huntress is a personification of a fiercely independent female spirit. So think Artemis from Greek mythology, living an independent life, running with the nymphs, not bothered, not affected by anything or anyone else. So she is the perfect example of the huntress archetype. Or we can think Julia Roberts in My Best Friend's Wedding, who is a strong, assertive, independent woman, who is a go-getter. And that is what a huntress archetype is mainly about. So a huntress archetype is a wild woman. This archetype is you can say it holds the energy of a feminine rage. And contrary to popular belief of women being all sugar and spice and everything nice, we do have other feelings as well. We women do get angry, we women do rage at ourselves, we rage at the world sometimes. And sometimes this rage brings about, it has the potential to bring about great positive change. So when women have finally had enough and when they decide to protest, when they decide to stand up against the system, when they decide to say that enough is enough and they decide to fight it out, that is when a collective change is possible. And this energy, this huntress energy, is the one that is responsible for this collective change. Now, when this is the dominant archetype, the woman's main aim is to achieve physical and emotional independence. Now, this huntress archetype is one that is free of all kinds of patriarchal influences and male-dominated norms. Now, the huntress women, they are usually, and they have this protective instinct. They are natural protectors of women who are victims, of women that need help. And just like Artemis, these women who embody the huntress archetype, they are very competent. They are committed to their independence, their life goals, and they are often detached from the influence of male ideas or male energy. So what we need to remember about the huntress women is that they are self-reliant, they are courageous, and they are focused. These are their good points. However, the shadow side is it also means that they come across as emotionally detached and sometimes even as cruel to others. Next, we come to the fifth archetype, that is the queen. Now, when we speak of the queen archetype, think a Greek goddess Hera or the Hindu goddess Parvati. So the queen archetype represents loyalty, fidelity, matrimonial devotion. Now, the women who embody the queen archetype are the ones who possess a goddess-given approach towards marriage or matrimony, and they are the ones who maintain meaningful alliances. But this archetype is one that feels incomplete without a partner, without a romantic partner. So women who embody this archetype, they possess strong leadership qualities. They are often known to be the social butterfly or the queen bee of their friendship circles. And the thing about them is that they are attracted, they're immensely attracted to power and to confidence. And so they find themselves often drawn to men who are assertive and who are very confident in nature. Just like Hera, the queens, the women belonging to the queen archetype, they are fiercely devoted towards their spouses, and they tend to feel jealous, or they tend to even despise women who they feel threatened by, who they feel their relationship can be threatened by. And just like Hera, who, despite the many infidelities that her husband Zeus would partake in, despite that she would forgive him every time. Just like her, these women who belong to the queen archetype, they too remain passionately loyal and forgiving towards their husband, and they overlook all kinds of transgressions for the sake of maintaining their relationship, or for the sake of keeping their marriage alive. Now, queen women are, now when I say queen women, I mean women who belong to the queen archetype. They often have, they're known to have an air of elegance about them. They're known to dress regally. They're known to be very prim and proper. But there is something about the way they come across that is kind of reflective of their stand, that these women are loyal not just to their partners, but they possess a strong sense of loyalty towards their family, towards their purpose in life, towards their cause, so to speak. So they make up for very good business women, very good entrepreneurs. But while loyalty remains their strong point, their jealous and their vindictive nature, that often ends up as their hamasya, that is their shadow, so to speak. Sixth, we come to the sage archetype. Now, the sage represents women who pursue knowledge, who pursue objectivity, who are constantly in search of a well-planned strategy. So a lot of academics, politicians, lawyers, they belong to this group, and they are influenced by the sage archetype. Now, the women who embody the sage archetype, they are competitive in nature. They are not just competent, but they have this cutthroat competitive edge about them. And if we go to see examples, there is the Athena in Greco-Roman mythology, who is the daughter of Zeus and who is known as the protector of patriarchy. And that is exactly what sage women tend to be in a patriarchal circle or a patriarchal system. They tend to identify with men, and they are often subjected to strong paternal influences. So just like Athena was called her father's daughter, these women who belong to the sage archetype, they are more drawn towards powerful men, and they have a strong they are subjected to strong paternal influences, and so they are better suited for careers in the corporate world. However, their attitude towards other women who are mostly below them at work, at the workplace, is often aloof, or is often considered distant, and sometimes it is even considered intimidating to other women. So while her pragmatism, while her wisdom, while her intelligence, her strategy, these are all considered as her best traits, her emotional aloofness and her kind of frigidity when it comes to sensuality and creative purposes, these are the drawbacks this is the shadow side. These are the drawbacks that the archetypal sage woman brings along. Last but not the least, we come to the seventh archetype, that is the mystic. Now, the mystic is a deeply spiritual, introverted, yet an independent and creative woman. So, this archetype is focused on inner spiritual peace, on maintaining a Zen-like inner peace. So, the women who belong to this archetype, they prefer solitude to the company of others. They are often into meditation and spiritual techniques. They follow the spiritual path. And this mystic archetype, it represents introspective and a meditative kind of a nature, the importance of which is often ignored in our modern society. But women who embody this archetype, they prioritize their inner peace more than anything else. They are known for their serenity, for their tranquility. However, the very strength of this archetype can sometimes become the challenge that the woman faces. So like intense introversion can result in the mystic woman seeming very withdrawn, seeming isolated, detached and emotionally frigid. When we seek examples of the mystic archetype, let us think of Hestia from Greek mythology. Then we have real life celebrities like Nicole Kidman. We have artistic souls like Frida Kahlo, whose very art was a reflection of her introverted yet her serene, tranquil self. She represents the mystic archetype. And with that, we finish our little lesson in self-awareness and Jungian psychology. Now, I must end here by saying that archetypes are meant to help you identify with yourself, to help you know who you really are at your core. So they are meant to help you tap into the qualities you desire, to help you align with your dominant archetype, like we said in the beginning. You use them to discover which is the dominant, or which are the dominant archetypes in your personality, which are the ones which exert the greatest influence to your psyche, and which ones tend to influence your behavior around others, your interactions, your desires, who or what you attract, or which archetypes are most represented in your personality, or which are underrepresented. And I think now that we have enough knowledge of the 7 feminine archetypes, maybe we can do this little small practice session kind of a thing. Try to identify your dominant archetype or the archetype of the women in your life. For all the women who are listening to this, I hope this provided you with some insight into your own personalities, into your own psyche. And for the men who are listening, I hope this helped you understand the women you love a little better. And with that, we come to the end of today's episode. Now you do yourself a favor and go discover your mirror, your shadow, and yourself. On that note, this is your podcast host Priyanka signing out. Bye-bye. Morning Chai and Ikigai is a weekly podcast. That means fresh episodes are uploaded every Sunday. If you want to connect with me outside the pod, I'm there on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is Dr. Priyanka Naik, that is Dr. Priyanka Naik. I am there on Facebook as well, and my YouTube channel is Dr. Priyanka Naik. I also blog at drpriyankanaik.com.